Hello, everyone. If you've tuned in for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution's Ocean Encounters presentation, Sailing for Science, you're in the right place. Coming up, we'll hear from WHOI Ships Captain Kent Sheasley, WHOI Shipboard Science Technician Catie Graver, and WHOI Marine Operations Coordinator Kerry Strom. Hi, everybody. In just a few minutes, we'll get started with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution's Ocean Encounters presentation, Sailing for Science. We've still got a lot of people joining us, so thank you for your patience. Hello, you've joined Sailing for Science, a Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Ocean Encounters presentation. We have a lot of people joining us tonight, so please bear with us. We'll get started very shortly.
The ocean covers 70% of the globe. It gives us oxygen and food and millions of jobs. It brings joy and shapes our climate and weather. The ocean is life, and it belongs to everyone. Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is the world's independent leader in ocean discovery, exploration, and education, working to understand and sustain one of humanity's most precious common resources. Join us today for our ocean, our planet, and our future.
Welcome to Ocean Encounters, a virtual series from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, or WHOI, as we like to call it for short. Tonight's event is entitled Sailing for Science, Sailing for Science, that is. My name is Veronique LaCapra, and I'll be your host for tonight. WHOI's Ocean Encounters events are made possible in part by the Avatar Alliance Foundation and Dalio Philanthropies. Thank you. Our fourth season of Ocean Encounters is also an endorsed activity of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. Before we hear from our panelist, I'd like to take just a minute and share some tips about how you can optimize your experience on Zoom with us. Throughout the evening, we'll be taking questions from all of you for our speakers. If you'd like to participate in that live Q&A, please use the Q&A button that appears at the bottom of your Zoom screen and type your question in the window that pops up. You might be more familiar with the chat function in Zoom, but please ask your questions using the Q&A function instead. We often get hundreds of questions, so I apologize in advance if we don't get to yours while we're live. You can ask questions at any time starting now. I also want to let you know that we are recording this event and that recording will be made available on the whoi.edu website. We had more than 1,260 people pre-register to join us tonight, so you're in good company. We also have viewers joining us right now on Facebook and on YouTube. So thank you and welcome to everyone. As you know, tonight's event is called Sailing for Science, and we usually talk with ocean scientists on Ocean Encounters. Tonight we're doing something a little different. We're going to meet some of the experts in ship operations who make WHOI's research at sea possible. They are WHOI Marine Operations Coordinator Kerry Strom, WHOI Shipboard Science Technician Catie Graver, and WHOI Ship's Captain Kent Sheasley. First, hi everybody, welcome. Let's go around the virtual table here and have each of you introduce yourself, and by that I mean tell us briefly what your title means, what kinds of things your job involves, what you're responsible for. We'll dig into your work more later, but for now just give us a little sense of what your role at WHOI is. Kerry, let's start with you. What does a Marine Operations Coordinator do at a research organization like WHOI?
So primarily my role here is to schedule for 3 ships and 3 subs. So the research vessel Atlantis, Neil Armstrong, URI's Endeavor now, and the HOV Alvin, ROV Jason, and AUV Century. And I work with the great operations team at WHOI and other academic vessel operators around the country to get as much science out to sea as efficiently as possible. It takes about a year of planning. We do about 12 missions a year. And I have to juggle the weather and, algae blooms and get the ships right where they need to be for spawning seasons and vehicle availability, and juggle teaching schedules, childbirths and weddings, etc.
Right.
So it's kind of a big scramble. And I'm also the liaison to the State Department for the clearances when we go into other countries, economic zones. And I also am part of a budding program at WHOI called Science Rocks, which is research on commercial ships. And
I'm going to stop you. Don't tell us more. We'll talk more about that later. Okay. But yes, we definitely want to talk about that. So Catie, let's go to you. What do you do as a shipboard science technician?
Well, if you've engaged with WHOI before, you know that going to sea and doing research at sea requires technology. So my responsibility is taking care of all of the equipment that our ships are equipped with. So our ships come equipped with bathymetric mapping sonars for mapping the seafloor, sub-bottom profilers for doing geologic work. We come equipped with underwater navigation equipment for tracking vehicles, such as Alvin and Jason and Sentry when they're in the water. We come equipped with water samplers, such as our CTDs. We come equipped with GPSs, inertial motion units, meteorological sensors, you name it. So my job is to operate, deploy, maintain, and fix those things while we're out at sea. And while we're not out at sea, I am responsible for installing it, upgrading it, you name it. And I guess informally, when we're out at sea with science groups, I'm their customer service representative. So you want it done, you need it done. They come to me and I work with the ship to get their work done for them.
Let's go back through those pictures just real quick and tell us what we're looking at in each one.
Yeah, so the one that's up on the screen right now is actually me on top of the mast of the Atlantis. When I was up there servicing our satellite communication domes. So that also falls in my purview of my job. As you probably know, all of this equipment going in the ocean means nothing if it doesn't bring back data. So as part of supporting that, I'm responsible for all of the network infrastructure and communication infrastructure and computing resources, servers that are on the ship. So the one that's in the picture up on the screen now is called a MOCNIS, which stands for a multiple opening and closing net environmental sampling system. That's a big word.
Good job. Yeah.
It's basically an electronic plankton net that goes down and captures plankton from discrete depths within the
invented, I believe, by one of our scientists, Peter Wiebe, or at least he was very instrumental in developing it. And then here's an instrument that you mentioned when you were talking, but go ahead.
Yes, that's our CTD rosette. That's pretty ubiquitous across disciplines within ocean sciences. Scientists use it for everything from capturing bacteria, viruses, plankton in the water column, to tracking water masses through salinity, to trying to capture the plumes of hydrothermal vents.
Right, so CTD stands for conductivity, temperature, and depth. Conductivity is basically another way of saying salinity. And last but not least, Kent, we probably have some idea in our heads about what a ship's captain or master does, but what's your role on the research vessel Neil Armstrong?
Well, yeah, pretty much your standard captain kind of job that most people can assume what's going on with that. But as far as the research vessel side of it goes, it's pretty much to facilitate what Catie does, what Kerry schedules us to do, what scientists need to do, all while maintaining the ship in a regular, legal and safe, status for the long term. So basically, making sure that scientists have access to sea for years to come, and get them out there and let Catie help them do what they do, and see if we can't find ways to get it done despite weather or any other challenges that happen. Facilitator, if you will.
I think you're being modest, but anyway, I want to stick with you, Kent, for a minute, because I know there's a lot of young people watching us right now who would love to know how you become a ship's captain. So let's start there. What does it take, and what do you need to be good at, and how did you get to where you are in your career?
Well, the ship's crews, as far as the pure crew goes, when we consider someone like Catie part of the crew as well, just by nature of how much time we all spend together. But the crew itself are considered merchant mariners in the old sense, in the old terminology, or professional mariners. And we are licensed and documented in like any ship, any commercial ship out there. So we have to go through those processes, whether it's whatever we have to do to get documentation and licenses to do what we do. And there's entry level and there's officer level, junior officer level. And it's just another discipline. some folks decide to go to tankers or container ships. And luckily there's enough folks like me that choose research vessels as a career. And it's pretty much the same process as any ship, as far as coming up through the ranks and becoming captain or chief engineer in the engineering sense, or chief steward in the galley department. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. A lot of the officers or folks that end up being officers come from a maritime academy of sorts. I personally went to Massachusetts Maritime Academy, but there's just like anywhere, or any ship, I should say, there's just a process of kind of getting in and working your way through the experience levels and gaining time and confidence and knowledge. And if you want to go higher and you prove yourself, you move higher. So becoming a ship captain is kind of it's an end goal for some. Sometimes I had no idea. I started as an engineer, so I had no idea when I started that I was going to become a captain, but it evolves. And in the research world, it's definitely engaging the science part of it. It's not just moving something from one place to another. It's really getting involved and caring about the mission, which is what we do. We get underway to go do stuff. We don't get underway to get somewhere else and drop off.
I want to talk more about that link with science in a minute, but so how long did it take you, for example, to become a captain, a master?
From when I started after school, when I graduated school, I ended up, I did do a little bit of commercial stuff, but on tankers. But when I started at Woods Hole, I started pretty much at the bottom, even though I had qualifications out of the Maritime Academy.
And what does the bottom mean?
Well, I should say, you know what? That's not a very apologize to my shipmates, because every position is incredibly important on the ship. There is nobody who's the shining star. I just wanted to kind of make that clear.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, so if you go to a place like Mass Maritime, do you typically come in as an officer, one of the mates, or
you might be lucky enough to get a junior officer position right away, but that's kind of rare.
Oh, okay.
And to be honest with you, we prefer people to, even though they have a third mate or a third engineer license, we prefer that they get some time as a crewman, which they're qualified for. But that there's a lot of things to learn on a research boat. These are very, very complicated ships, far more complicated than the standard cargo ship.
Mm.
And there are a lot of varieties of equipment that we use and ways we use them. So it's a lot to take in, and stepping in as an officer right off the bat, especially when you're pretty new and young to sailing, is a daunting idea, because there's a lot going on and there's a lot of complication and a lot of things. And
yeah,
a lot of this stuff that Catie takes care of, we actually have to kind of have an idea about in order to support her and the science party.
Yeah, so let's go to Catie and to Kerry afterwards, and kind of I want to ask a similar question, sort of what got you interested in ocean-related careers, and how did you get started and get into the path that you followed? So, Catie, go ahead first.
Well, honestly, I'm a bit of a wayward scientist, is how I got into it. I started out being exposed to field oceanography as a college student. College really opened my eyes to all the different disciplines that existed within ocean science. In a moment of honesty, I went to college wanting to train dolphins at SeaWorld. That's what I thought marine biologists did.
That's what everybody wants to do.
I thought that was the epitome. That's what you did. And turns out, thankfully, I went to college, got a good education, and found out that was incorrect. And there were so many more aspects to marine biology. So that got me headed on a path towards an advanced degree in ocean research, to be a research scientist. And after digging my heels into that field for a short bit, I quickly discovered that was not for me. I was not good at it, and I did not want to do that. And so I went looking for a job where I could use what I already knew and gather a few different bits and pieces of my life together. And thankfully, my first job that I found outside of academia was teaching ocean research techniques to students, where I combined some previous teaching experience with that. And so the technical aspect came about very organically, because as I mentioned, nothing happens in ocean science without technology. And so you sink or swim or forced to learn it pretty quickly. And then moving on to WHOI from there was a pretty natural progression.
Makes sense. Kerry, how about you?
Yeah, so I always knew I would work on the water somehow. I was influenced by my family. We had a sailing school. I lived near the water growing up. In high school, I worked on a fishing boat. And there was a maritime academy close by as well, and I just assumed I would go there. But my dad, being the Archie Bunker type dad that he was, basically said no daughter of his is going to take a paycheck away from a man feeding his family. So, and since they were paying for half of my college, I wound up doing a fine arts and communications degree in undergrad. And then when I was like 24, I just decided to take a loan out and go to maritime. So that's when I went to grad school for my mate's license and master's degree in shipping. So career paths aren't always straight. I am a good example of that.
Absolutely. Kent, you mentioned that you worked on commercial ships, tankers, you said, I think, before coming to Woods Hole Oceanographic. How is working on a commercial ship different from working on a research vessel or vice versa? You said it was more complicated being on a research vessel.
Yeah, so research vessels kind of fit into a bigger group of vessels that go to sea to work, as opposed to commercial cargo vessels that go from port to port moving cargo. So that's definitely a different mindset, a different, there's a lot of things going on with ships, working ships that go to sea, and science vessels have a lot of different systems, and ours in particular are designed basically to accommodate a wide variety. And so I guess that's where it comes down to, is the variety of things that we do compared to a commercial vessel, where we go, where we operate. I mean, we're way outside of commercial shipping lanes, for instance. We go to extreme areas and go and try to do things in extreme ways to get data for scientists, because that's what it takes. It's if it were easy, everybody'd be doing it, right? But one of the reasons why I enjoy the research world is for the variety, but also, in my years here at Woods Hole, I've been around the world, ice to ice, north and south, and around the world probably 4 or 5 times. And I don't know a lot of my peers who've been in the commercial world who can say that. And seeing all different kinds of cultures and spending time in different ports, and but really it's the interest of the science that we do at sea and what we're accomplishing that makes it worthwhile.
I think something that WHOI does amazingly well is that coordination between the ship operations and the science that's trying to happen. It's not always an easy marriage, right? What the scientific priorities don't always match up well with the weather or conditions at sea, and so a big part of your job, I think, is making that coordination happen, right, between the crew and the science party on a research vessel.
The balance, for sure. It's we have the mindset of running a ship, and then that's not always conducive to getting the science done. And so, yeah, it's the balance, and it's, it always starts as keeping everybody safe and whatever. But then in order to accomplish a lot of things, we're put in a position where we're doing things outside of weather windows and that normally ships wouldn't do. So it's it's a balance.
Yep. We're getting a lot of audience questions, so let me take a quick look here. So several people have asked, this is for you, Catie, how long did it take you to learn how to operate all those different kinds of pieces of equipment on a ship like this?
The answer is forever. I still don't know how to operate everything on the ship. I've been with WHOI almost 15 years, and I still don't know. There's a lot I don't know. I just gave some advice recently to one of my new coworkers. She said, how do you know this? And I said, the most important thing for you to know is not to learn everything. It's to learn what you don't know. Is the most important thing, and learn to ask questions and question everything before you do it, so you don't make a mistake. Try and learn what you don't know ahead of time. So it's very much a sink or swim, literally, environment out there.
Hopefully not literally, but yes.
Literally, almost literally, it's a sink or swim environment out there. So if you don't know what you're doing, you figure it out, you get real creative and try and get real good at reading manuals and figure it out. But honestly, the longer you work, the more you realize the less you know.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. I'm not quite sure I understand this question, but Antje is asking, how long does a person stay on a ship during one of their studies? I don't know if they mean a research cruise or while you're studying to get to your job, but let's assume that means a research cruise. How long are research cruises?
Who wants it? I'll answer that. Typically, our research missions are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 weeks long on average. I would say sometimes we do shorter ones that are only a week, especially if they're coastal. Or I've done cruises that are as long as about 55 days has been my longest cruise.
Wow. Yeah. Kent, what's the longest research cruise you've ever been on?
55, 56
Yeah.
days. When I first started, we were doing those back to back for many months on end. So those were long trips. Luckily, those don't happen much anymore.
And that's when the food aboard ship becomes really important, I bet. How is the food on WHOI ships? Catie, you work mostly on the Atlantis, Kent on the Armstrong. How's the food?
It's fantastic. I am a terrible cook and I hate doing dishes, and this is a dream job.
That's awesome.
That's one of the challenges the galley folks have is keeping fresh vegetables as long as possible, and they have some interesting tricks for that. But usually after about 2.5 weeks, it gets a little bare on the fresh vegetables.
Yeah,
I mean, we're down to frozen and bean salad.
When you start opening the 3 bean salad, it's time to go to port.
All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and ask Kerry and Catie. You're both women working in oceanography, a field that historically and in many cases continues to be dominated by men. Has that presented any challenges for you in your careers? Kerry, why don't you go?
Yeah, definitely when I was younger. So this does not apply to my time at WHOI at all. I just want to preface that. But when I first started out, I remember going on interviews and being asked if I was going to have children. I'm in my mid-20s, so I guess they thought they would get that out of the way and, maybe not hire me. So that happened a couple of times. And once I was training people in the office in the port, and I got passed over for a promotion. And when I confronted the director, he basically told me straight out, like, you're gonna get married and have a family soon. This guy's gonna be around. He's the long-term bet. And when I was working in the ports, loading and unloading ships, I was attacked by 2 stevedores, unfortunately. And when I was working offshore, my supervisor asked me, and we're both married, by the way, but he asked me if I wanted to be his offshore wife. So I guess that's a thing.
Oh dear.
So I was quite naive when I started out. I thought I'd be treated like a sister or a daughter, but it wasn't that way. I did move to Scandinavia, and I think it's women in shipping are much more acceptable. So everything since then has been really good. Yeah.
All right. Challenging for sure. And
Yeah.
Catie, how about you?
I would say that for the most part, my experiences haven't been nearly as dramatic as Kerry's. I've been really fortunate to work in my day-to-day work with people who respect you for what you know and what you can do. And that's been great. When I was first starting out, I worked for a captain who thought it was great that a woman wanted to be attack on a boat and was super supportive, and it was great. Something that does happen in our aspects of the job, though, is working in environments like shipyards. And I frequently have to call out to tech support, to vendors, usually where I'm talking to a male on the other end of the phone. And I frequently find that I have to overcome a hurdle of I know what I'm talking about and gain their trust, which takes a lot of extra time before they'll take me seriously. So I would say that's like the biggest hurdle that probably men in general don't have to overcome necessarily.
Yeah. It's like bringing your car to the auto shop.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly the same environment. We work with a lot of vendors and shipyards and stuff that aren't quite as progressive as WHOI, so to speak.
So sort of on the other end of things, Kent, as captain, I know you've worked to increase the number of women among your crew and to support diversity, equity, and inclusion for everybody aboard the Armstrong. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so, in this day and age, I think the starting point is the atmosphere, and it's important to have the atmosphere that avoids the stuff that Kerry and Catie just mentioned on the negative side. And I have been lucky to have sailed with some very strong women who also helped to kind of set that tone and wouldn't put up with nonsense and had kind of the confidence to support that as well. But it's also it's across the board. You really have to have an atmosphere of not having those old biases and the kind of archaic attitude for stuff, and give people a chance right off the bat fairly across the board. It's hard. There's still some older folks that aren't totally up to speed, but I'm encouraged when I see more women want to stick around and say that they like the atmosphere and want to stay here and be part of it. And, there's times when, a third of the crew are women and it doesn't seem to skip a beat anywhere. Everything just rolls on like no problem. And that's encouraging. I know you still have to watch out. You still have to kind of head up any kind of attitude that might allow something to go awry, but
That's great to hear. Let's take some more questions from the audience here. We've kind of heard this, but this is a good one. Who is responsible for safety at sea? Asks Sherry. Kent, you want to take that?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that again? Safety.
Safety at sea. Who's responsible?
Well, the standard answer is everybody, right? That's one of the mantras, right? That we need to kind of hit home with everybody. So in the traditional sense, I guess I'm ultimately responsible, but you don't want any one person to be thinking about that. You really want everybody to have that mindset and that standard. So everybody. So
I went on the Armstrong once early in my time at WHOI, and I know that at the beginning of every cruise, no matter how many times people have been on there, there's a safety training, right, that we all go through. And fortunately, my colleague Craig behind the scenes does not have a photo of this, but I had to put on a Gumby suit, which is like this horrible red survival suit that's really
It's not
hot when
horrible.
you're in the boat.
Once you've done it 100 times, it becomes like you don't even notice.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Let's see, what else have we got here? Matthew asks, how much notice do you receive before having to ship off on a cruise? And are you able to choose which cruises you go on? Or opt out of ones you don't want to go on if they conflict with your life at home, for example? Anybody want to take that one?
I will say that when I have a pool of funded work, I try to pick the coolest work, but unfortunately it doesn't always work out that way. It's always what makes sense and what's efficient and cost effective. But I don't think Captain Kent can stay home if he just doesn't want to go to Iceland this year.
I've tried.
Catie, do you have any discretion about which cruises you go on?
Not a ton. Generally, we stay on pretty regular rotations, and there's a little bit of flexibility here and there, and some negotiating with your colleagues. If they'll stay a little longer, you can come back a little earlier. But for the most part, it's just luck of the draw. And yeah.
Catie and Kent, how when you're at sea, how much of the year are you at sea typically, and overall?
I spend historically anywhere from about 6 to 8 months a year away from home. Sometimes that's involved in maintenance periods of the ship. It's not always exclusively at sea the entire time, but the vast majority it is at sea. And when you're gone, is the way the cookie crumbles. Yes, you're going to miss birthdays and Christmases, and that it's bound to happen, and you're going to miss births and deaths and illnesses and things like that. And sometimes you can work it out, but sometimes you can't, and that's one of the major drawbacks.
Ken, is that about the same for you as far as time frame?
About the same, yeah. I will say seniority has its privileges sometimes. Unfortunately, not. Yeah, it's the way it works out, and that's one of the downsides of it. But you get used to it.
All right. That's an interesting question from Kathleen. Do all research scientists joining a mission at sea have prior field oceanography experience and/or maritime training? Kent, I saw you start to shake your head. Go for it.
No, it's well, by the nature of that world, there are scientists who, yes, absolutely have been to sea many times and are quite competent at being on board ship and understand the whole system, and they help along bringing the younger folks who aren't as experienced. But it's pretty much across the board. But most trips, we also have younger folks who are just starting out or don't have a lot of seagoing experience. And so that's just, we kind of have both sides. We have folks who know their way around the boat, know how to kind of jump right in. And then we have folks who are absolutely unsure about even where they're sleeping and how to get there, and have never seen a survival suit, have never heard anything about fire extinguishers, or and so we try to get them an introduction and get them some experience.
Catie, how does that play out for you in your job?
Absolutely, we get all ranges of experiences, from scientists who have been going to sea for 40 years to undergrads this is an internship and they get to come help out at sea. But that's actually one of my favorite aspects of the job, is getting to meet students that come out, especially undergrads, grad students, early career scientists, and enlighten them not just to the equipment on board and how it's used, but to all of the different disciplines that they could go into in ocean science if it doesn't work out for them. Case in point, me. And then also just like the idiosyncrasies of going to sea. Just I
Like
get
what?
asked
Give me an example.
I get asked more than once in my career how to operate the washing machine.
So technical questions of a different kind that maybe you didn't expect. Yeah. Let's see. Let's go for another audience question here. Oh, these are really interesting questions. From Blake, what does the average watch look like on board a research vessel, and what are the typical rotations? Very specific question.
Fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we, when I started, we did the traditional 4 hours on, 8 hours off watch schedule. But quite a few years ago at this point, we started playing around with some of the different European models of different watch schedules. And what we're currently doing right now is basically a 6-hour watch and a 2-hour watch. And everybody except for the deck gang, meaning the able-bodied seaman and ordinary seaman and bosun, who's a day worker. Everyone except for that deck gang is doing a 6-hour and a 2-hour. And what we found is it gets people a lot more rest in one stretch. Back in the day on the 4 on, 8 off, you'd have to be really good to get off watch, go down, take a shower, have something to eat, whatever it is, wind down, jump in bed. And if you were lucky and you were really good, you got 6 hours tops. So anyway, we shifted it up quite a few years ago, and it's been pretty successful. There are other versions. There's other watch rotations out there, but we've kind of settled into the 6 and 2. So everybody has a 6-hour and a 2-hour, and it seems to work out pretty well. And then, in the off time, there's still off watch time. There's still overtime work or other responsibilities that everybody has. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. So schedule sounds like it's kind of one of the challenges of working at sea. What are some of the other challenges? Kent, why don't you start?
Weather, and yeah, basically.
I think we have some video footage that will reinforce that. But go ahead.
Kerry keeps sending us, to these crazy locations to do these trips. Yeah. And that doesn't even see it. It's very hard.
That's not even so bad, right?
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Weather and actually, trying to get things fit things in. Scientists only get so much time allotted to them for, on a given trip. And there's a lot of things they want to do. And so one of my roles one of my responsibilities, I would say, is to get as much of their project or all of their project done as we can. So one of the biggest challenges is looking at the weather and locations and times to get somewhere, move from one spot or location to another, and utilize the very limited time that scientists have for ship time and accomplish as much as we can for them, safely, of course, and efficiently and all of that kind of stuff. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is just people. When you have a group of people together, especially isolated on a ship, that's a challenge.
Yeah. There's no getting away from your annoying colleague on a ship, huh?
No.
Catie, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, yes, you have to still sit with the annoying colleague at the dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner table for a month straight. It's not like land where you can go home at night. I would say, to echo what Kent said, the biggest challenge of going to sea is the sea itself, not just weather and rain. We have to deal with currents all the time is a big factor in deploying instrumentation, and electronics and salt water and electricity and crushing pressures don't mix. And that is our sole job, is to put electronics in the water. So that leads to naturally things don't always go as planned and they require fixing. And time at sea is really valuable. And oftentimes scientists have been preparing for years. Kerry knows how early they put these proposals out to go to sea. They're years and years in advance. And this is their 14-day window to go do their culmination of 3 years of research. And if things aren't working right, the pressure's on to the best of your ability to make it work for them.
Yeah, Kerry, talk about that from your perspective at who you work on land, but yeah, how does that stress to get things done in narrow windows at sea play out for you?
Well, I mean, we're a team. By no means do this by myself. I'm constantly, throwing stuff out to the team saying, do you think we can do this? But I'm always impressed that we can do these cruises. The scientists come on, they bring all their lab gear to these remote places, and they're able to set up. And you have to remember, this is science. So a lot of this instrumentation and all the sensors are new, they've just created them. And then, Kent and his team and Catie is able to implement that into the vessel's platform. And, if you look at their reviews, they're called PCARs when the scientists disembark and they give their review of the success of the cruise or not. They lose very little time. And that's a testament to like Kent and how he operates the ship, and Catie and how the technicians are able to seamlessly just take these people out of nowhere. They don't know most of them, put them on the ship, get things, hooked up and off in a few weeks. It's really impressive. I have a lot of respect for what Catie does and Kent and the crew. Yeah. And the scientists, of course, they're also.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just the crew who need to be, or some part of the crew that needs to be on 24/7. Usually science is also going on 24/7 when they're out at sea, right?
That's right.
It's not a 9 to 5 thing. It's all night and all day. Any other challenges that you've faced in your career, Kerry?
Again, early on, when I was working in the Port of New York, it was very startling to me when the bulk carriers would come in and we'd find dead people in the cargo hatches. The ships came up from South America. And of course, for me, I had never seen anything like that. So that was shocking. I've seen it a few times later, but I've gone through some oil spills while working with ships in the port. So it's like whenever things go wrong, it's a huge learning curve. So I've learned a lot over the years. When I was a vessel operator in Norway, one of the ships that I was backup for collided in the English Channel and sunk. So I got that call at 4 a.m. And one morning when I was working offshore, I woke up to my shift and I saw that the vessel was in the 50-meter circle of an oil platform. So that everybody's face was totally pale as we're standing there waiting. It was just extreme weather and wind, and the type of ship had brought us into this. So it was crazy. And then I think the last draw for me working offshore was when I was working in the Gulf of Guinea. There was a French vessel 60 miles north of us, and they got boarded by pirates. So everybody had to, in addition to their regular shifts and watches, they had to go on pirate watch. So I was like, okay, that's it, I'm done. So I'm happy to work in an office.
That makes me think of something though. Have WHOI research ships ever had to come to the aid of other ships at sea? Maybe there's a question for Kent or Catie, or actually Kerry too, if you know.
Okay.
Yep. It's happened. Certainly happened. The Atlantis just had a couple of experiences earlier this year. I've had probably 5 or 6 over the last 15 years of significant times when you kind of stop everything and go help people. And that's part of a ship at sea. It's you can't turn down when somebody needs help. You just go and figure it out.
All right, let's bring in another question from the audience here. Let's see. That's an interesting question, career related. So Briley who's joining us on YouTube actually is asking, is it more challenging for someone who starts this type of career later on in life? I don't know if any of you can comment on that.
Oh, I'll start with that one and say definitely not. I can't emphasize enough how many different skills and talents are applicable to a maritime career, especially in tech work, but on deck too. People come to that from all things. But in technical work, are you in IT and computer programming? Great, we have a job for you. Are you an auto mechanic? You're good with motors, those hydraulics? Great, we have a job for you. That's applicable. I've worked with more than one colleague who's come from the auto industry, matter of fact. So you name it, if you have a skill in it, it's probably applicable to something we do at sea.
Cool. And I have another question. Actually, I don't usually take two questions from the same person, but in this case, I'm going to do it. Another one from Briley. How do you decide where to go and what research to do? Kerry?
Like I said earlier, I try to pick the interesting work, but at the end of the day, we basically do what's best for the science. So if the science needs the Neil Armstrong versus the research vessel Endeavour or the Sharp, we go with the Armstrong, and we just try to accommodate. Everything is about the science. Everything we do has to be to make the success of the science mission happen. So basically that's how it's chosen. And then at the end of the day, the funding agencies like National Science Foundation, Office of Naval Research, NASA, NOAA, they basically approve the schedules, and that's how they get published, and then Ken takes care of the rest.
All right. Let's see. So it's kind of related to what you said, Catie, about needing all different kinds of backgrounds at sea. But Ashley wants to know, she says she's an undergrad getting a bachelor's in geology, geospatial science with a minor in math. And she wants to know, are there jobs for undergrads? But sort of more broadly, I would ask, what would somebody with a background like that have a fit? And, what kinds of backgrounds are best for these kinds of careers at seas?
There isn't a wrong way to go about it, for sure. The more experiences, the better. Like things you may think are not applicable to what you might be doing in the future at sea are totally applicable. Case in point, wayward biologist. It sounds like I might do something related to biology. Right now, I do not in the least. Has nothing to do with my day-to-day job. So with the right attitude, we can train anybody. Like I said, we've had ex-military out as techs. We've had former auto mechanics out as techs. We've had IT and computer programmers out as techs. We've had more than one wayward scientist like myself. I think we have 2 or 3 current techs that are wayward scientists. So it's all fair game.
And a question from Carla for Kent. How do you go about getting merchant mariners certifications? And would you do that through a maritime academy, or are there other avenues?
Well, the Coast Guard actually oversees our documents, our personal documents for being qualified. So you get what's called a merchant mariner credential, and that on that credential is whatever level you're trained and experienced to and tested in being capable of doing. There are entry level positions: ordinary seaman, wiper. Ordinary seaman would be a deck entry position. Wiper is the entry deck engine position. And generally you can get in a food handler as well for the galley folks. And from there you work on experience and further training to kind of work your way up. And there are levels that are just experience based, and as you get the experience and you can document that experience, you can upgrade your level on your merchant mariner's credential. And then at some point you get to a place where you need to start taking tests to prove that you're competent to move up. But anybody can get there's background. You have to go through background check. You need a physical, and there's some basic safety training that you need to get. But it's all pretty doable if you really want to do it. It doesn't take all that long. It does take a little bit of effort, but it's doable. And that's to go the crew side. Catie's been talking about the tech side, which is slightly different. They don't have the credentials, the Coast Guard credentials, but it depends on which direction you want to go.
Yeah. So we've been talking about earlier some of the challenges that you all face. So let's flip that around. What are some of the highlights of your career, the things you most enjoy about your job, or something memorable that happened or that you're most proud of? Kerry, let's go to you.
For me, I think early on I was super proud that the whole purpose of going into the maritime, I wanted to be a sea pilot. And by chance, they opened up the application process and I got chosen, which anybody in maritime knows it's really difficult to get your foot in the door there. So I thought that was really great. And also, I moved to Sweden by myself when I was in my 20s. And I stayed in Scandinavia for 9 years, and I did it by myself with my own monies. And to my family's amazement, I did okay. So I'm really proud of that. And I think my favorite part of the job is working with really interesting people. Lots of different cultures, talk about politics, music, and their lives. And I really enjoy that. I like to meet new people and stuff like that. And probably my favorite part about my current job is I get to work with people from all over the United States, like the other vessel operators. They're a cool bunch. And the funding agencies, great group of folks down in DC. And then this Science Rocks project.
Yes, I want to make sure we get to that.
Yeah.
So talk about that. What is that?
Yeah, so Science Rocks is research on commercial ships. That's what that acronym stands for. And it's basically a bunch of ad hoc scientists and engineers around the country that are working to put plug and play instrumentation and sensors on commercial vessels, on liner services, which are regular transits.
Okay, so take advantage of ships that are already doing whatever they do and actually put science aboard those ships, science instrumentation.
Right. Yeah. And so, it's a lot of fun because it's a supplement. I mean, what these research vessels do, cargo vessels can't do that, but cargo vessels can take measurements. They could have meteorological sensors. They could have an acoustic on the hull. They could deploy, like here, and you see in that picture is an Argo float. They can.
And what's that?
Gently
What's an
launch
Argo
that.
flight? What's an Argo float? Yeah,
that's an Argo float. And they're so psyched to do it. So I've been working with the companies that I had worked previously in my commercial life. And everybody has budgets for sustainability these days. So they're just more than willing to help. The crew lights up. They're like, wow, I can do something positive. What do you mean? And they go online, and we often name the Argo floats after the captain or the crew, just to get them engaged. And then we have this great route right now between Jamaica and New Orleans. So it goes past the loop current. And so every 17 days, we're getting data that the NASA satellites aren't getting, that Argo floats aren't getting. So it's just another layer, another ground level of ground truthing for science to get a good picture. Yeah, so it's really exciting. It's a lot of fun.
And for those who may not know, tell them what an Argo float is. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, and I don't know if that's just me or on someone else's end. But yeah, what's an Argo float?
So an Argo float is an instrument that can go down about 1,000 meters. It has a bladder that allows it to sink, and it collects water samples, temperature, and it collects all this data. And then I think it's every, Catie, correct me if I'm wrong, is it every 5 to 10 days? I think it comes up to the surface and it emits to the satellites all the data that it's collected, and it keeps doing that on a rotation over and over, and it basically follows the currents. And you can go to an Argo website, all over the world we have these. So it's another way to basically...
Yeah, the maps are pretty impressive. You see all the
They
little
are,
dots, but...
yeah.
So, but the idea here is that a commercial ship would be able to just basically toss one overboard, and it would do its thing on its own.
Don't say toss.
Sorry, no tossing. Gently place in the water
Yeah.
an Argo float.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost the government anything, and it's like citizen science. It's so exciting for them. It's exciting for us. You know, a lot of these companies will contribute costs. Yeah, there you go. That's a great, well, not a great picture, but
yeah.
a picture. That's like all the Argo floats around the world.
All right.
And it's all different countries that do it. So it's not just the US, but WHOI is one, that's a major program at Woods Hole Oceanographic that we have. Yeah. And last winter, actually just a year ago now, alongside Captain Kent's Neil Armstrong, we had the sailing vessel, was that the Iris that was alongside? And it was a gorgeous aluminum vessel that we packed with like 94 floats from Canada and the US. Yeah.
Neat. Catie, highlights of your career or things you like about your job?
The things I like about my job are pretty numerous. If I can hit highlights, I hit one of them earlier, which was just meeting people. I love meeting students and enlightening them. That the picture right here is a wonderful program called STEM Seas that's just started in the last couple of years, which stands for STEM Science, Student Experiences Aboard Ships, where it gets college students out just to go to sea and see what it's all about. A wonderful program. I love that. I love having a front row seat to world-class research that WHOI does and institutions around the world are doing. And world-class vehicles like Alvin, Jason, Century, Remus, you name it. The cool aspect of just eating breakfast with world-class scientists, people that you would normally never get an opportunity to talk to, even if you were just their student. So that's really great. I get to play with really fancy toys. To put it lightly, if you want to play with some expensive things and fancy toys, we've got them. That's pretty exciting. And then, as I mentioned earlier, too, as simple as I don't have to cook or do dishes.
All right, Kent, a highlight of your career thus far.
Oh, well, like Catie said, there's so many things. And when I get asked that question, I tend to blank out, trying to remember all the cool things. But I will say that watching folks develop professionally and become, the experienced ones is kind of an interesting thing to me. I remember being new. I remember being young, and of course, I thought I had stuff figured out, or I thought I had these experiences, and I thought whatever. But and I remember my mentors and my, the great captains and engineers and at WHOI long before me. And I guess the culmination of that now, or the way that kind of turns out now, is I get phone calls quite often through the day and night. And there's a difference in how those start. And if they start, everybody's okay, nobody's hurt. I'm not sure where that call is going to go, but at least they told me nobody's hurt, which is the primary thing. But it's so much cooler to get a call and say that, and here's the mate on watch say, Captain, you're going to want to see this. And that's a much different approach. That means like there's something cool going on. And that, so it's whether it's just recently up north, this past fall, there was a whale. We were stopped on station, and I've seen plenty of whales in my time, but I've never seen one like within 4 feet of the side of the ship, just
Wow.
jumping up constantly for probably about 45 minutes or so, feeding on krill and literally coming right up next to the ship. I mean, that was a first for me after 27 years at Woods Hole. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, Northern Lights, it's this kind of stuff. When you see this stuff, you just kind of time stops briefly and you think of all the people in your life that you wish could see what you're seeing. And they can, and you can't possibly describe it fully and thoroughly enough to actually, but compared to the experience of seeing it, but you try, but it just doesn't do it justice. But yeah, it's that kind of stuff. Just the things in the development of people. And I love walking into a situation and the younger folks who started out not knowing anything, they go through stages, and the next stage is, how do you want this? I can do it this way. I can do it that way. I can do it this way. That's a pretty good stage check for somebody getting comfortable and confident in being at sea and doing their thing. And then when then something comes up and they say, Captain, I took care of it already. It's all done.
That's actually a nice segue into what is going to have to be the closing question for tonight, which is I would like to hear from each of you. What advice would you give to a young person who aspires to a career related to marine operations? Kent, we'll start with you.
Oh boy, there's 100 things there too. Figure out how to be reliable. Figure out how to be a reliable person to yourself and also to those you work with or your shipmates. That's probably one of the most important things on a ship. We talk about being good shipmates or whatever, whether it's the science party as well, but crew techs. We rely so heavily on each other, and everybody's super important. There is no shining star on the boat. It takes everybody, and everybody needs everybody else to get things done and to keep the ship rolling along and safe and productive. So be reliable. That would be my biggest one.
Catie, how about you?
I would say similar things to what Kent has to say is that if you want to do something, just do it. Just go ahead and do it. I like to say one of the biggest barriers to getting into a field is thinking there's barriers. Just do it. Just keep at it. And don't close any doors for yourself. You never know what's going to be useful down the line. If you're out there and you're 15 years old and your dad says, you want to learn how to solder in the garage? Every 15-year-old girl is going to say, no, I did too. And sure enough, down the line, you're going to be like, Dad, can you teach me how to solder? I need to know this. You never know, do that. And as far as just grades in school and everything, like get good grades because it might open a door, definitely don't close any doors on purpose for yourself.
That makes sense. Kerry, you're going to get the last word here.
Awesome. I think what Kent and Catie said is right on it. But I would just add to it, find good mentors, because there's going to be a lot of times you don't know what to do and you don't know what's out there. So when I give tours, especially to young people, or if I speak to young people, I always give them my contacts, and if I can help you, I will. If I don't know, I'll find someone that can. And just work really hard and don't be afraid to ask, and really hustle, like work hard, because that means a lot. People see that and they want to be around someone who works hard. So yeah. And the world is small, so contacts are. You'll be surprised at the end of your career how small the world is.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess I would say to anybody with more experience out there watching, be a mentor if you have the opportunity to do that, because it really does make a big difference. Well, unfortunately, we have not gotten to a lot of questions that came in, and I apologize for that. I'm excited to see so much enthusiasm for this topic, though, but we have to wrap up. So I want to say a big thank you to Kerry Strom, Catie Graver, and Kent Sheasley for participating in this great conversation about careers in marine operations at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Thank you also, as always, to my WHOI colleagues who work very hard ahead of each event and also live behind the scenes to make Ocean Encounters possible. And to everyone who joined us on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube, thank you. Tonight's event was the last in our 4th season of WHOI Ocean Encounters events. But don't worry, if you're a fan of our series, we'll be back next year with more great programming. So please watch our website, whoi.edu, for more information about that. In the meantime, you might also want to take a look at the very cool merchandise at WHOI's online store, which is shop.whoi.edu. And for tuning in tonight, you can get access to a 15% event discount, and the discount code for tonight is SHIPOPS. If you enjoyed tonight's Ocean Encounters program, you can become part of WHOI's solution-based approach to ocean science. Please consider becoming a WHOI member. You'll be providing crucial support for our outreach and our science, and you'll get some great benefits in return. Memberships start at just $35 a year. The average gift is $100, but any amount helps. Your support will make a difference. On behalf of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, happy holidays, thank you, and good night.
Out where the seas are the deepest and the mysteries the greatest lies our future. The ocean is our last unexplored, ungoverned frontier. The life support system for our planet, inextricably linked to our climate and weather, and to the lives and livelihoods of countless people around the globe. But even against the ocean's vastness, humankind can be a formidable force. What happens next demands action that is rooted in scientific understanding and unvarnished truth, because our world stands at a fork in the road. In one direction, we watch the ocean being catastrophically altered beyond its ability to sustain us. In the other, understanding outraces exploitation, and we help steward and protect this most precious shared resource. What will be the legacy of the 21st century? Together, we can unleash the world's most creative minds, passionately dedicated to ocean science, engineering, education, and policy. Together, we can provide the expertise needed to know what works and a trusted voice to present the facts as we uncover them. Together, we can shape the future. We can inform governments, businesses, and conservationists. We can generate new knowledge in service of society. We can be the catalyst for change. It is more than our responsibility. It is the defining moment of our generation. We are explorers, students, and stewards of the ocean, and this is our time.